girls, it's Miss Jennifer here again, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how you can do a really cool science experiment with stuff you probably already have at your house. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how you can extract DNA from a strawberry at home. I know that sounds probably like something you can't do at home, but surprisingly you can. So I would probably suggest that you guys either get like an older sibling or a parent in on this with you, because we're going to be using a lot of kitchen stuff, and your parents would probably appreciate it if you kind of brought them in on it so that they know what's happening. But what we're going to need today is you're going to need salt, water, dish soap, rubbing alcohol, and a strawberry, and a coffee filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by mixing up what is going to be called our extraction liquid. So that's what we're going to be mixing with the strawberry to actually break it apart and get to that DNA that we want to get. So I'm just going to grab a third of a cup of water, and then you will also need just a tablespoon of dish soap. Just whatever you guys have in your kitchen is fine. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It just needs to be dish soap. And we'll add that to our water. And then you're also going to need a half of a teaspoon of salt. So get that added in. So this is just our extraction liquid. It's just soap, water, and salt. Mine happens to be green because we have green apple dish soap. So just whatever you guys have, that'll work. So I'm just going to stir it up, get everything mixed together, make sure the salt is dissolved in there and that it's all mixed in nice together, because we don't want anything to just kind of float around on its own in there. So next I'm going to get a strawberry, which we have because we've been having strawberries basically every day for the past few weeks. So it's going to take a strawberry that I set aside for this, and I'm going to use a knife to just cut the green top of the strawberry off, because you just want the bottom part of the strawberry. You don't want those green leaves that are on top. And then I'm just going to take a little ziploc sandwich bag. We're going to put our strawberry in there. And you don't want to close it up all the way at first. You want to leave a little opening so that you can smush it and squeeze all the air out that you can. And then just seal it up. And then we're just going to start smushing the strawberry. You're just going to squish it around. And you want to do this for a bit just to make sure everything is as squished as it can be. So I'm just going to set a timer for myself. You don't necessarily have to do it for as long as I'm going to, but I'm going to go ahead and do it for, let's say, 2 minutes, just to make sure that everything is broken up and we can get to all the DNA that we can. So I'm just going to kind of get everything down in one corner so it's nice and easy to smush. And you're just going to spend a little bit of time just squeezing the strawberry, just making sure it is crushed and smushed as it can be. I know that this isn't necessarily the most exciting part, but we're just going to squish it all up. And I'm actually going to set mine down so I can make sure it gets really squished. Just make sure that you don't put too much force on it and pop the bag open, because then you end up with strawberry all over your kitchen, and that would be a mess. And I don't think your parents would particularly appreciate that. Which is also why I say get them in on it, so that if it does bust open, they can take a little bit of the blame. No, just kidding. We won't blame our parents for messes we make. So I'm just going to get that all nice and smushed. Okay. And once we actually have that all smushed, I actually only squish it for about a minute just because it's all kind of nice and goopy already. So then what we're going to do is you're going to take the extraction liquid that you made up, just give it another good stir, and you're going to put 3 tablespoons of it into the bag with the strawberry. And you will have more of the extraction liquid than what you need, but that's totally fine. That way you just have more than enough and it's easy to mix everything together. So then we're going to do the same thing that we did last time, but we're going to do this for a minute. So we're just going to squish everything around. You want to make sure that everything that you smushed up, all of that strawberry, gets mixed in with the extraction liquid. And it's going to bubble a bit, and it's going to kind of get kind of like a cloudy look to it, which might be hard for you guys to see on my camera, but it's going to get kind of a cloudy look to it, and it's going to bubble up because we have soap and water in it. But we just want to make sure we get all of that mixed around, and just keep on mixing it. Like I said, you want to mix this for a minute. And once again, be careful that you don't rip your bag open or bust it open, because you don't want to make a mess. And also, we don't want to lose our science experiment, because that would not be good. We want to kind of see this through to the end, because it's really cool. So just going to mix it all up. And there's our timer, so I'm going to stop my timer. So I'm just going to set that to the side real quick, and I'm going to kind of walk away from the camera real quick to grab a coffee filter, because I forgot to grab that beforehand. Alright, so I'm back. I got our coffee filter. So we're going to take our coffee filter. I just put mine in a little measuring cup. So we're going to take our bag, and we're just going to dump all of what we mixed up in this bag onto the coffee filter. And you want to make sure that you're not kind of going over the sides of the coffee filter. You just want it to go into the coffee filter itself so that you can filter out what we need. So you're just going to let it filter. You can set it down in there, but I'm just going to kind of hold mine up because I'm actually going to just gently squeeze the filter. You don't want to squeeze too aggressively because you will kind of create a hole in the filter and it's not going to do what we need it to. But you can just kind of gently squeeze it to kind of help speed up the process a little bit. Because sometimes this can take a while to filter out, but we don't want to be here for forever trying to get this to filter, so I'm just going to lightly squeeze it. And then either once you've let it set and filter on its own, or you kind of squeezed it all out of the filter, you'll have not very much, but just a little bit of liquid. So that's going to be what we're actually pulling the DNA out of. The rest is just kind of like pulpy material that's not what we need. So I'm going to take another measuring cup that I set aside, and I'm going to grab rubbing alcohol out of the freezer. So I put this in the freezer about half an hour ago, just to kind of make sure it was nice and super, super cold. So we're going to need about half a cup of this. You won't necessarily need the entire half a cup, but just so that you have plenty, you will need about half a cup of it. So I just measured out half a cup of our super cold isopropyl alcohol. So I'm going to take that, and to our liquid, that's all of our strawberry liquid, you want to slowly and gently pour this into there while you're tilting it. So you want it to kind of run down the side of the measuring cup that has the strawberries in it. So you just want to be nice and slow because you don't want it to completely try and like mix together. And you want a decent layer on top. You want to go for about an inch or so on top of the strawberry mixture, just to make sure that you have nice, good separation and that you can get to that DNA. So I'm just pouring this in there, nice and slow, because what will happen is you'll actually end up with a layer of this isopropyl alcohol on top, and it'll kind of float on top of the mixture we have in here from before, which is what we want. We want it to kind of float on top so that we can pull our DNA out of it. So I went ahead and I just added in the entire half a cup that I measured out, just to be sure that I had enough. So you'll see that you have these layers. So I'm going to try and get closer so you can see it. So in mine I have this bottom pink layer that's our strawberry pulp, or what we filtered out from our strawberry pulp. And then you have this top layer, which is the alcohol, and you can kind of see one right here, but there's this long white stringy bit in it. So what I'm going to do is, there's also some like floating very much on top of the pink layer, kind of getting into the alcohol. So I'm just going to take a straw. You can use a straw or a pair of tweezers, pretty much anything that you can kind of stick down in there and swirl around a little bit. So I just use a straw, and then if you look, there's these like white pieces. I'll put it on a plate so that maybe it's easier to see. Now, I didn't get very much from my strawberry, but also my strawberry was about a week old, so that might be why. Because usually you'll get a lot more out of it, so if it's a fresher strawberry, you'll probably get more out of it. Or if you like mix it around with the extraction liquid, you'll also get more of it. But if you see, this little white piece that's on this plate is actually strawberry DNA. And we were able to get that out, which is stuff that you probably already had at home, which I think is really cool. But also, I'm a science nerd, so I think pretty much all science is really cool. So, now to kind of explain how this works. So first off, what we're doing with the soap in the extraction liquid is that actually helps to break apart the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is what is kind of around the outside of every living cell, or most living cells. The cell membrane kind of keeps stuff from getting access to what's inside the cell, so it helps protect the cell. But the dish soap that we added actually helped to break up that cell membrane. And that's actually how antibacterial soaps work and help to actually kill the bacteria and things that are on your hand. Is they actually break up that outside barrier of the cell so that the cell isn't itself anymore, so it can't harm you or infect you. So that's actually how hand soap and dish soap work. So we used that soap to dissolve the cell membrane of that squished up strawberry we had. And then the salt that we added in there actually makes it to where the DNA, so the chains of that information that make a strawberry, the salt actually helps to release that DNA because it breaks up the chains that are kind of holding the components of that DNA together and inside the cell. So it's just further helping break down that cell and make sure we can get what we want out of it. And then when we add in the isopropyl alcohol, or rubbing alcohol, at the end, we're actually separating out that DNA because the DNA actually isn't going to dissolve into the isopropyl alcohol, especially when the alcohol is cold. It's not going to dissolve in there, so that we can actually pull it out of the alcohol instead of it just dissolving away. So why does this work? Well, the reason that this works is because, first of all, strawberries are very easy to pulverize. You can squish them up really good just by hand. So that means that we can break it down and kind of put that extraction liquid in there really easily to get what we want. And also, they have a very high DNA yield. Now mine didn't have that high of a DNA yield, probably just because it's old, so it's kind of starting to go a little bad, but if it's a fresh strawberry, you will actually get a pretty decent amount of DNA out of it compared to other fruits. And also, strawberries are what is actually known as octoploid, which sounds really weird, but in human cells, for the most part, there are some cells that aren't, but for the most part, we have what is called diploid cells. So that means that we have 2 copies of each chromosome. So if you've ever seen the little like X's for DNA or chromosomes, that's what I'm talking about. There's 2 pieces of the same genetic information. So with strawberries, they actually have 8 copies together in each chromosome. So they just have a lot more DNA. So it's a lot easier to get to because you can squish up a strawberry really easily to break it down, but then also it just generally has more copies of the DNA information in the cells, so you have more to work with, essentially. So what you can do is, if you want to kind of play around, see if you can get DNA out of other things, like other stuff you might have around your house, like other fruits, or oatmeal, things like that. Just try and see what you can get out of it using the same method. And you can also vary the amounts of soap that you add to your extraction liquid, or salt that you add, or kind of the amount of time that you mix them together with the strawberry or whatever you're trying to get the DNA out of, just to see if maybe you can get more DNA or less DNA. It might be fun to play around a little bit. And you might be wondering why, if we had the isopropyl alcohol in the freezer, why it didn't freeze. Well, the reason it didn't freeze is because water, which we typically make into ice in our freezers, freezes at about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, ethanol, which is pure alcohol, actually freezes at negative 173 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a lot colder. So cold that there's no way that at home in your freezer they would ever freeze. Now, rubbing alcohol, which is what we use today, is not pure alcohol. It is a mixture of alcohol and water. But what I use is about 91% alcohol. So it's so much more alcohol than water that it has such a low freezing temperature that it won't freeze in your freezer. But it'll get super ice cold. That way it's nice and cold so that we can just make sure that we're adding a little bit to that process to make sure that the DNA doesn't dissolve in our alcohol before we can get it out of there. So I hope that you guys try this at home and that you have fun getting DNA out of strawberries or whatever you decide to try and break apart and get that DNA out of. And I hope you guys are making the most of what you can right now, staying at home. Hope all of you and your families stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy. See you. Bye.